Welcome back, Screamers, to part 2 of our Christmas Extravaganza episode. Today, we are opening gifts, the gifts of fine cinema. We have given each other movies, and the movies A Woman Kills, The Butcher Boy, Morvern Callar, and The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. Jason, before we unwrap these presents, anything you'd like to...
Yeah, sure.
Get into
add? One, we switched up the movies a little bit because I didn't think Brock and I were responsible enough to talk about A Reason to Believe.
No. Yeah.
Did you end up watching A Reason to Believe? Okay, nice.
No, I will. But I didn't for today.
And and that's fine, obviously, because we're not going to talk about it. But it was a look, A Reason to Believe, and the reason I didn't think we were responsible enough. I think we could handle it. I don't think it's noteworthy enough to talk about if we're not being irresponsible talking about it. And being irresponsible talking about it probably is
in poor taste.
Especially in 2023. Fucking 1996, Jason, when he saw this movie, it was all over, just ripping this movie.
Right.
But it is about a young girl who finds herself, she's a sorority girl, and she finds herself at a frat party. Her boyfriend is gone and left, and one of the other frat members sexually assaults her.
So what you're saying, it was her fault.
It definitely was her fault. In 1996, it was
defo her fault.
And so then it's this big, it's just this ridiculously heavy-handed just thought experiments, giving it way too much credit. But it's this message film that should have been like a TV movie of the week, but it has the F's and the S's and the boobs and the whatnots in it. Well, actually, just one set of boobs, which is why at this point is the only reason the movie is notable, is because it is a very early movie done by Holly Marie Combs of the Charmed fame, and she is in fact topless in this film. And so that's really the only reason. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. I don't mean to it is the only, but it is the reason why this film.
Is it the reason to believe?
It is the reason to believe this film is actually still talked about in Breast Aficionado magazine, which I let my subscription lapse in '98.
Right next to Cigar Aficionado.
Yes.
Sometimes it is just a cigar, right? Cool.
but it's fun to make fun of, but it is and so when it came out, and the reason, obviously, the movies that I picked, not The Butcher Boy in this case, I actually did want to give Brock a good movie to watch.
I will argue that The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra is a good movie for different reasons. I'm.
Dude, I need to pull up the quotes page for The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, but part of the reason I choose the movies I choose is so I can make Brock watch these things. And so A Reason to Believe was one that I wanted to make him sweat through, because it has like a bevy of notable faces of the time. It's got like Anthony Quinn's son in it, who he's a terrible POS. I mean, he's a bad person. He was married to Lauren Holly and was Jonathan Majored her up. It was a bad whole thing, yeah. And that was the only reason that Holly Marie Combs was actually in the movies, because she was friends with Lauren Holly. And said, hey, you want to do this part. And then it has Jay Underwood in it, who was in The Boy Who Could Fly, and so it's just and he's the bad guy, But the dialogue is so terrible. It's just this really ham-fisted bro-hand stereotype. I mean, it's bad. But it is a fun watch just to make fun of. But in 1996, when it came out, it was kind of looked at as this kind of independent message film that had a lot of important things to say. And it's just looking at it now, obviously almost 30 years later, then it looks like this TV movie of the week. But back then it was we're finally, saying that women can dress however they want and drink however much as they want and have sex with whomever they want, and they still should be able to go to frat parties and not get raped. Obviously it's a good message to have. It's weird that we were having to have it in 1996. Looking back on it now, it's a weird
in that kind of way.
Right. That we're having this it's very higher learning-esque.
Okay.
And so it's got the it kind of wears those ridiculous messages on its sleeve. But anyway, yeah. So let me talk if you will indulge. So I just got back from Hungary and Austria to Budapest and Vienna.
Were you sort of trying to right the wrongs of authoritarian governments while you were in Budapest?
So we. No, the answer to that is no. I was just enjoying the Christmas. I should have, but you only have
American.
You only have so much time, and I want to hit the bathhouse and I want to hit the Christmas market and have a little bit of mold.
I thought you could multitask.
It's very hard to get in to see government officials and on just on a visitor's visa. So actually, you don't have to have a visa to get in either one.
I was going to say.
And I just drove into Budapest. I didn't actually. So I didn't actually get my passport stamped going into Budapest.
You wouldn't have to, right? You could just drive across.
Right. Yeah. That's what we did. And so we did do private tours. And that sounds hoity-toity, but it's really not that big of a deal. Like so we did private tours in both cities, which is kind of fun because you get to go with a local and they tell you local things and then you get to hear the history. But you're also not given a saccharine type of tour that you would normally get if you gave with a bunch of other people that, And so we got a lot of, weirdly enough, and I guess not weirdly, because both were done by older white men. And when I say older, I mean like in their at least 65, if not older. And so we got
around your age.
Yes,
I know that really wasn't funny.
I know with Andre Braugher dying at 61, it's really here's the thing about turning my age and then what your age will be very, very quickly coming up.
Like we're essentially the same age. I just like to give you shit because you're like,
Of course, my beard is more gray than yours.
just barely though.
Is that you start to see? You start to check like death years, and it starts to freak you out. It's like fuck 61. That's not that. That is like right. That's like outside the door. So I got to get some shit in order and get some shit taken care of. Like 61's
but do you? I mean,
no. My life is a downhill slide.
Right.
But, as I was saying, older white men. Now, Hungary's history is a little bit more. I guess Hungary's historical the perspective that we got was a lot of like, we got the whole spiel because of where we were, and we were taking a longer tour in Budapest. But he was telling us about, Ottomans and the Huns and, Nazi regime. And so we got the whole, and the communist and all of it. So we got a whole, really, the full few thousand years of Hungarian history. And, so there's a lot of anti-communist, and there's a lot of, because again, you're seeing you're seeing the uprising of communist and socialist sentiment. And also I asked him about the communist sentiment. And then when he gave me the answer, I stopped. I didn't ask about the fascist sentiment. Not that this guy was a fascist at all. In fact, he was not a big fan of the Catholic Church, or there was not a whole lot of, and he really wasn't abusively racist or
just mildly racist.
Right. Well, there was a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment at the time, and of course, I guess you can kind of understand that. Not understand it from perspective of a country that has been invaded by Turks and Ottomans.
Right. Before the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? It was part of or it was at least sort of conquered by or invaded by different empires of that.
It spent its entire history
like being somebody else's property in a way. Yeah.
So understanding, what I mean by understanding it is that I understand there are a lot of emotions going on both sides of this conflict. So the whole point is that I guess a lot of both Austria and Hungary are over. They're compensating for the atrocities that happened in World War II. So there's a lot of protectiveness of the Jewish population. So there were actually Palestinian protests in Austria at the time, but they were all surrounded by Austrian police. Protecting them and allowing them to protest, and they were very small protests. In Hungary, they were our tour guide was that they're not allowed. It's just not allowed. So it was a weird sentiment. So,
but two very different styles of governance too in those two countries. Yeah. It used to be under one king.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. It was an interesting, when we got to Austria, it was a lot of gender fluidity and woke. Same thing your Fox News grandpa at this point is railing about, right? But what I did find interesting is that when we were in Budapest, we went to a movie called An Explanation for Everything. I don't know if you've heard of it, or it won one of the prizes over at Venice, I think. And it's this movie about a young boy. Not young boy. He's
like adolescent, right?
Yeah,
Teenager.
He's a high school student about to go into university, I think. And so like he's kind of this. When you first see him, you see him studying, and he's like, and it's told in this really interesting way over, as we kind of bounce amongst the characters. So but he's studying for this test. He's kind of in love with this girl that's a friend of his. He's studying for his finals. And on his history final, he freezes essentially. So they're all oral exams. He freezes, and and the school is, trying to help him out during the test. And in order to kind of break up the silence, one of his professors, who's this kind of liberal professor, asks him about a nationality pin that he's wearing on his lapel. And I guess he was wearing it on this, day of remembrance in Hungary, this March 15th day of remembrance that they have of the uprising against the communists. And so the kid comes back and he's crushed, and his family's like, you're never going to be anything in your future. You just ruined your entire future. And so he somewhat concocts this story, and it's very much a he said kind of situation, but he concocts this story. The teacher asked him about this nationality pin, and that's why he failed, is that because this teacher was always egging him on, and the teacher had already had some kind of confrontation with his father. We don't see that happened before the event. But it was and then so like this kind of Fox News-esque type newspaper, picks up the story and then runs with it, and then all hell breaks loose for both sides. And then so it's this kind of like story that exists. The movie was good, but it was very much more interesting because we had taken the tour that we'd taken. It was interesting in the film to hear Hungarians talk about George Soros and throw around the term libtard. And like, it was very enlightening to know that type of situation and those types of conversations were, because eventually the man's father, the boy's father, and the liberal teacher, he comes over to talk to the teacher comes over to the house to talk to the boy and try to straighten things out. And then it just turns into a shouting match between him and his father, and they just end up insulting one another. But I don't know. It was interesting to see that is not, obviously isolated to U.S. shores and to U.S. conversations at this point in time.
No, and I think that geopolitically, Hungary would probably be really closely aligned with some of the sentiments that are going on here. What is the dictator president's name in Hungary?
I don't recall.
He's very much a Trump type figure, right? So, I think spewing some of those same ideas, again, filters down into that kind of population. But I don't know. I mean, I think that it's not surprising to hear that. I think really anywhere. And I think too, like I know that's more sort of Eastern Europe, really, right?
Right.
I think especially there, we're seeing more rises of nationalism, of some of these ideas, and especially some of these this like anti-outsider sentiment as well.
Yeah, and they were very careful, both of them, trying and how they characterized their dissent with the left leaning. In fact, the guy in Austria was like, "Oh, this all started with the Marquis de Sade." I was like, "All right, it's a 2-hour or 3-hour
sure."
I don't think we have this much time to go into the depth.
Right. About how you're going to connect this with the Marquis de Sade.
I think what was surprising to me in the movie was the terms libtard and Soros. And not that I guess because American pop culture gets thrown around as well, and I'm sure that the same, and I guess these are all global conglomerates anyway that are just manufacturing these talking points. So it shouldn't surprise me, but it was kind of interesting to see it. All that aside, the theaters in Hungary and Vienna both made me weep before theaters here. We were able to see a 35 millimeter, gorgeous, pristine 35 millimeter print of The Life Aquatic. They were doing this at the Kino. There's a Kino Cultural House in Vienna, kind of in the Vienna Square. and they were doing, I forget the name, and it's I kind of wish I hadn't, but they were doing a whole series of films based on this like German underwater filmmaker, and they like discovered like 60 hours of undeveloped film and like movies that he had done, and so there was a couple of things that were going on, and Life Aquatic was kicking it off. But like we were in this old theater watching a 35 millimeter print. We were sitting up on a balcony, and then down below they had a small like pop-up record store / DVD Blu-ray store and bookstores. You could just go in, have a drink, and wander around, and it's just one of those things where like I know that it exists in the States, but it doesn't exist here in Fort Worth, and it's just kind of it's so crazy that it doesn't.
And even in other states that have more of that, there's still, so much of what you see is the ruins of what was once there.
Right.
These places that used to be theaters, and of course those movie theaters used to be vaudeville theaters, and then were converted, right? And now they're just nothing, right? Yeah. Or now they're a fucking conference room, right? Right. Or they're, I don't know.
Or some sort of just mega church horse shit thing that goes on. Or
right. And so we just lose these things. I don't think we don't see the cultural value in some of these things, whether it's old churches or old movie houses or just old buildings in general, right? That's one thing. You can look around this city and see how little we give a shit about sort of preserving, some of that history, culture, or just aesthetics.
Yeah, socio-political stuff aside, just being, and I wanted to go back to Vienna for a while. I'd been previously, but like just being in a place where you have buildings that are, like when we were walking around Vienna, and he's like, that building was built in the 1300s, and that building was built in the 1700s, and that building was built in, and there's just, and yeah, now it may be a W hotel or a Hyatt or like this old, like he walked me into like the oldest bank in Vienna and was like, now it's a restaurant / it's a Grand Hyatt, but like they were encouraged and kept all of the old aesthetic, and then when they restore, it's incredible to walk around. And I know America's history is not that old, but we don't even give a shit if it's but also things we're lucky a reason to believe exist at this point.
as we have lamented here.
So future generations can see Holly Marie Combs. Much to her lament, I'm sure.
Put it in the archive. Well, I'm glad you had a good trip.
It was a nice trip. Yeah,
I had to stay here, but whatever.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be.
The Hungarian baths were amazing, by the way. That was it was a lot of like, it was the most popular one from a tourist destination. So there were a ton of people there. And I talked to you off mic about the TikTok portions of it, right. which is a global phenomenon. I know it's here in the States as well, but it is, and it really wasn't as bad as I was making it out to be. There was only a couple of girls there doing videos and stuff, and then it's fun, whatever.
They're influencers. That's their quote unquote job.
But there were a lot of European dick swinging at this place, which was, and of course the baths were not, they're just outdoor pools essentially, but it was just cool. It looked like a Wes Anderson picture. Like if you look at it from like one of the balconies, it was like,
that's what the picture looked like too. Almost like the Grand Budapest Hotel. Yeah. So weird.
Anyway, so that was my holiday trip.
All right, well, good for you. I think all of us listening and talking to you right now are jealous.
Or angry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, angry always, but
right.
Yeah.
Especially since I told people who liked Killers of the Flower Moon to fuck off. But Yes, I spent the last week drinking
hate mail.
Austrian beer and mulled wine and walking around
half drunk,
watching people celebrate the birth of Christ by large amounts of commerce.
Christmas,
which is what he really wanted.
Christmas. That's why he was born, December 25th.
That's why he was born, was to sell shit, tchotchkes.
And WWJD bracelets.
Do you think he laments, like when he was resurrected, that he laments that he didn't like really cash in on his name, like he didn't really take advantage of the look, commercial?
Look, what do you think the Shroud of Turin is? He came out of the tomb hawking that thing, right? Like
the first screen print.
Like the first selfie. Marketable. Wow. We just
Merry
lost.
Christmas,
We just lost listeners. Well, actually, we shouldn't. I mean, if anyone has listened to this long enough to be a listener, they have to sort of expect some of these things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I made a joke one time when I went to Jordan, where you can actually see the quote unquote baptismal place of Christ, is that they should have made it into a water slide where you also are baptized at the end of it. Did
it go over well?
It didn't. It didn't go over well. But I'm used to that, and that's okay.
Look, that joke was for your amusement, for no one else.
Most of my jokes.
I was going to say, yeah, that's as they should be. As they should be. Do you want to talk briefly about Dream Scenario before we get into the? Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Why does the zebra look the way it does?
So embarrassing.
Hey, focus.
Is this how it went?
No, it's different now.
Oh, you've been on my mind recently.
Yeah?
Because you keep popping up in my dreams. You don't do anything, you're just there.
So, this specific person, the remarkable nobody, I've also had that experience. Do you have a picture?
Have you been dreaming about me?
Have I been dreaming about you?
Yeah. There's like 100 messages. Somebody wants to interview me.
Well, this is strange. Maybe you should take a minute and think before you do anything drastic.
Why me? I don't know. I'm special, I guess.
How does it feel to go viral?
Who's actually had a dream about me?
You're scaring me, Paul. I'm going to have nightmares.
I wish I was the one people were dreaming about.
Me too.
Yeah, no, it's something.
How's he dealing with all this?
We're not even the type of people that like attention, you know?
Do you think other people are seeing you naked?
Maybe thousands.
I hope I'm behaving through your dreams.
Oh, no, you're not.
So I'm finally cool, huh?
I didn't say that.
You hear that, Janet? She's saying I'm a cool dad.
I really feel like you're playing with fire here.
Dad, please help me!
I'm not actually doing anything to them.
You know, fame can come with some less desirable side effects. You should be prepared for that.
Maybe we should cool this thing off.
What? What do you mean?
It's embarrassing.
Which part?
I guess I'll see you in my dreams.
Yeah. Of course not.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I do want to touch on it because it is, I think, worth your time to see. So this is a nondescript academic starts appearing in the dreams of random people. He soon becomes a sensation, but his sought after fame and attention has pretty terrible consequences, and he is forced to reckon with what he thought he wanted and what he lost.
Well, tell us, who it's directed by and what their previous film was.
This is Kristofer Borgli's new film. He is the director of Sick of Myself, which again, we talked on this very parish. We talked about this film. I think Borgli's becoming a really acute satirist, especially of like this attention economy that we find ourselves in, right? And sort of asking this question of like, who gets what, who deserves recognition, and why, right? And I don't, here's the thing, I don't really think this film is about fame or wanting to be famous, right? Or even like the pitfalls of fame. It seems to be a movie that interrogates what makes us think we should want this attention, right? And what and who tells us this attention is important or is a gateway to some kind of success, right? I think it's a film about undeserved wants or feeling like you should get something just because you're a straight white man.
Well, I think it's also It's also how. I definitely think the straight white man is really the point. I mean, Nicolas Cage. I wonder. I don't always give Nicolas Cage the benefit of the doubt. So I wonder how much he truly understood. I think Nicolas Cage is very. I think he's a desirable actor in the sense that I think that he spent his entirety of his youth like kind of breaking out of a box of a normal. He will come to your indie project and bring something that you may not be able to contain, but will at least bring some interest into it and will do something with it. So I think if there's something that's not on the page, I think he can add to that. So take something like, what was the Kathleen Turner movie? Peggy Sue Got Married or something along those lines. Or Vampire's Kill. Right. So those, all those films where he's like kind of taking it to the next level. And then of course, like you've got these independent filmmakers that can kind of rein him in and also like, really kind of extract something from his world. But then you see something like Prisons of Ghostland and it doesn't always translate. So I wonder how much Cage picked up on truly, because again, when you see him in interviews or hear him in interviews, it's not always like he's an actor. He's a working actor, right? He's not some savant. And so I wonder if he really kind of truly understood what he was bringing to the table in this role and what this role was all about. Because I do think that this is a very biting and the kind of expose is the wrong term, but just this biting commentary on white privilege. And I also think it's an interesting dynamic and take on not only undeserved fame, but then how everyone around, in society reacts to that fame. And then how quickly we obviously can turn on it once it goes south. Right. And once it becomes a negative thing in our lives. I do. It's one of those films that I don't know, like Sick of Myself is so like on the nose, right? I mean, like it's very easy to pick up on, and it's even like in a Triangle of Sadness type way. It's very easy to pick up on what the satire is targeting here. I think Dream Scenario is much more subtle. I think this is a much more interesting, and not a more interesting film, but I think it's a more interesting evolution in the filmmaking process where you're not kind of pointing it out. And of course, it makes sense to not point it out because it's obviously that would be there'd be quite a bit of backlash, I think. But I do think it's kind of, a very subtle and really, I think it's really good meditation on white privilege, and that's what I walked away from. It's like it's an audacious take for a second film to like, and for it was A24, right? It was okay. So I mean, that's right because I saw the poster for it. And then so I mean I saw A24 put out one of their special posters for it. It was the reason I saw that. And so I mean like it makes sense that A24 would put it out and they wouldn't be shying away from it. But I mean I really, really dug it. I don't think all of it works. I think it kind of falls apart at the end.
That like third act is kind of
the virtual reality stuff, and then. But I do think him kind of turning into a Jordan Peterson as like that third act actually plays pretty well. You see this right now working with. Have you kept up with the Matt Rife? You know who Matt Rife is?
With the comedian?
Yeah.
A little bit. And I've seen a little bit about that. Yeah.
But he's most recently gone on Jordan Peterson's podcast to like reclaim his but I mean, woe is me.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, this is that it's exactly that, right? It's this idea of like, well, look, what I find so sort of fascinating about this film is that this character constantly wants credit for things that he has no reason to want credit for. Right. And so in this same kind of way of like, well, no, you should just give me these things. I should just be able to get this fame or sort of be popular, or you should laugh at me just because or whatever. Right. Even in the dreams, he does nothing. He gets famous for doing nothing in the dreams. Right. And famous is the wrong word. He's like TikTok famous, right? I mean, he's like, essentially is what it is, but he never acts. And so he wants credit from like an old, grad school colleague because she's doing similar research to what he did in, 20, 30 years ago. And he hasn't written anything since then, but he wants credit because somewhere he had a similar idea to hers. And she's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But that's the whole thing. He wants people to give him attention for these dreams, even though he's not doing anything in the dreams, and then doesn't even do anything interesting with that attention.
No. And this is a guy, by all accounts, lives this very upper crust middle class.
And did you notice it's not even his house?
Right.
It's his wife's house that she grew up there.
Yeah.
So like He doesn't even.
It's weird that it's kind of getting, I guess, lost in the. I don't hear anybody really talking about it, and it's interesting that this white fragility and this white privilege that this is clearly taking aim at is not really being discussed in terms of this film. Have we lost that in some sense, or maybe I'm just not returning into the right channels? But I mean, like, who's talking about this? Like, who's doing film dissection at this point, especially at this level? We talked about it with they clone Tyrone.
Yeah,
it's the same thing where I guess you see it some. I guess I haven't seen that new Julia Roberts film, but I guess I don't know what clicks and what doesn't, and like But you would figure an A24 release starring Nicolas Cage, by a director of a heralded indie that.
But who watched Sick of Myself?
Yeah, I guess. I would hope film critics. I would hope that and I haven't. To be fair, I haven't read many reviews of Dream Scenario, but I don't go out and seek them out. But I mean, most of them are gonna. I don't. It just doesn't seem like there's a conversation being had about the underlying themes of a lot of these films.
So I think this, something you just said is a really interesting point about you didn't go seek them out, but the fact that you have to seek them out, I think, is part of why there isn't a bigger conversation. It's like, where are the real other than this podcast, where are the real sort of in-depth conversations about film or even about art, right? In general. Okay, maybe some other podcasts, but people aren't talking. The things that move the needle are maybe not this kind of film, even though we think they should be, because they're doing interesting things and bringing up interesting questions.
Well, flip the script, right? I mean, and something like Sound of Freedom, you heard that shit all over the place. And this should be the same type of needle mover that would, look, I know that that's a lightning rod for both sides, right? And so I get that, but this is a similar topic that people should be excited about.
Right, but does this take more work?
Absolutely.
Than like Sound of Freedom.
Right, absolutely.
So there you go. You just answered your own question. But seriously, I think that is a problem. I think that it's so easy to look at Sound of Freedom because it, again, is wearing its message all over itself, right? Really all over itself. And of course, then the other side is sort of wearing its indignation all over itself. But people aren't sitting down, to dig into this film and be like, this is interesting. Even if all of it doesn't work, right? I see some, interesting tidbits to pull out here and kind of get into. And how, again, it's commenting directly on the society we live in this moment.
Right.
Right. And I think to dismiss it is to dismiss that, right? Is to dismiss everything around us.
I almost wonder if it's like a failing of the distribution houses that they're not playing this up, that they're not talking to these points, and then to that end, there's just not enough. Like the junket press tours are just going to talk about blah blah blah, just the very surface level bullshit. But I would want the director to be out there talking about this, giving their opinions on this. Clearly this seems to be the message that they're trying to get across. And but if you look at the marketing for it looks like a kind of farcical. It's the next Nicolas Cage kind of silly unbearable talent kind of thing.
He's gonna freak out.
Right, and this looks weird, so let's go see it. And I get that you're gonna want to trick some Fox News viewers into going to see Dream Scenario. They're not gonna pull out what they're not gonna see it anyway. They're not gonna see the film. They're not gonna
get the subtext. They're not gonna read the subtext, right?
I really liked it. I loved I really loved this, his progression, especially, going from a guy who never wanted to be recognized except, when it behooved him, right? He teaches about the zebra and blending in, and that's the whole reason, and then when he's starts to get the modicum of fame, then he starts to lean into it, and then obviously when it all turns on him. And then he leans into the right wing, to the point where he's wearing a Freddy Krueger glove. Right. There's a real level of like I said, there's a real level of brilliance there that I think is I just don't show me who's talking about it. And this is a film.
Come talk to us.
And this is a film, like, again, this has been such a fucking light year for movies and like important, significant art house, meaningful motion pictures. And it's crazy to me that this one is kind of flying under the radar. And then maybe it's because it's close to Poor Things, and Poor Things is probably going to clean up on all the smaller awards. But like when you have such like non-film huge films like Killers and Napoleon, which I have not seen Napoleon yet, but it's seemingly turning out to be of these just easily forgotten, like quote unquote prestige films. Why aren't you picking up the fact that the only other release in the theaters at the moment is a really, really interesting independent film being put out by a really, really interesting production company that has a message here that whether or not you agree with or not, it at least is tackling it, which I don't think there's been any other film really that's done that.
No, not as successfully, I think, as this.
Yeah. So go see Dream Scenario.
Go see it, and it's shot on 16 millimeter. It's super grainy, but it plays with that dream kind of haziness, which I think is great, which I think is a really good choice. Go see it. Okay, let's open presents, Jason.
Let's do it.
Where do you want to start?
I don't know. I didn't know if you wanted to spin the wheel.
I didn't make a wheel.
Didn't make a wheel. Doesn't matter. Let's just.
I don't know.
We can do alphabetical order.
Pick up. Okay. We can do that. We can start with. Well, I guess do we start with A Woman Kills or do we start with The Butcher Boy?
Let's start with The Woman Kills.
All right. Let's start with The Woman Kills. Yes, one of the happy films that I gave Jason. So this is the, this is a lost film by the director Jean-Denis Bonin. Again, shot on 16mm during the 1968 protests there in Paris. The logline is a series of prostitute murders disturbs the public with the thought of a serial killer on the loose, which really does not describe this movie.
No, it doesn't. This movie fucking is bug nuts, man. It's all at once. Funeral Parade of Roses. It's Psycho. It's like all of this, and it's French New Wave expressionism. It's. I don't know why this was a lost film.
I don't either. So essentially, or at least kind of what I gleaned was that they couldn't really find a place for it. They were like, what is this? We don't know. Because like you just said there, it touches on all these different genres while not touching on any of them. Right? It's really weird. And it's, as much as it feels French Wave, it's kind of like an or French New Wave. It's kind of like an anti-New Wave. It's weird. It's not really quite that either.
It's like Shadows for French New Wave, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. And so they were just like, they just shelved it. They were like, we don't know what to do with this. And so we're just going to put it away. Right, and then.
But it's an hour and 10. Like, why not show it? Like, like, throw it out there and see what sticks. Right? I mean, like, what's the harm? And putting together a few 16mm prints of this and seeing where you can show it.
Yeah, I wondered too how much of the like pervading attitude, social attitude, worked against it. Because as much as I admire France, right? And as much as I think there's some really cool stuff in sort of French society, they're still fairly Catholic in some of their views, right? Some of their views, or at least at this time in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, I don't know when. Was abortion legal there before it was here or not? I don't quite remember, but I know like being gay, and in this case, is he trans? Is he just a cross-dresser? We're not really quite like sure. Mm-hmm. But that was, not really, looked on with with open arms.
Right.
Well, as much as there's this kind of also like, free love attitude in the film too, which I think is, sort of an interesting. I mean, because there's a lot of casual sex just for casual sex sake. Right. Get that right. But then there's this complete like pushback on, say, homosexuality or this kind of gender fluidity.
I'm sitting here smiling because this fucking movie, man, it's impossible. Like, so, because again, to explain it in normal plot terms, is doing it such a disservice.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because you've got to, and so spoiler alert, a woman does kill, but only at the end, and she kills the man who's been dressing as a woman
to kill women,
who's killed all the other women,
and they don't hide this.
No, I mean, like that's the thing too. Like, I mean, like really, the first time you see him chasing anyone, you're like, okay, well, that's clearly him in a dress. I do think it's. God damn, there's just so much about this fucking movie that I love.
I know, right?
Like it's so funny, and I mean, like it's so, but it's so serious and like weirdly sexy and also weirdly unsexy.
Yep.
Like it's just like our the titular the bad guy in this movie.
Louis.
His mother made him dress up in women's clothes.
Yeah.
We all have problems with that.
Like they don't fit me anymore. It's weird.
His mom made him dress up in girls' clothing. And so that we're led to believe, this has a very much of a psycho element in that case. And then so he dresses up as a woman later on in life. He does this, and then so what has happened is that prostitutes have been being killed in Paris, and then so at the beginning of the film we learn that the prostitute that they've arrested and convicted of these crimes has been executed, but immediately more prostitutes are being murdered, and then we get all of this in kind of a pseudo documentary style where we meet the prostitutes who have been killed and we kind of watch their deaths. Louis is the executioner, who is the actual person who's actually doing he's also the executioner, but also the actual person doing the murdering.
Also, that's his street name. I'm sorry.
Right. He's seducing the lead detective on the case. And so they are kind of in a weird, like, cat and mouse kind of relationship. All the while, there is a narrator that's going on, and it's, like I said, like, narrating the most mundane and very specific details of all these people's lives.
Yeah.
There are also Jonathan Richman-esque songs being sung throughout the movie.
Which, are almost like touching on what's going on, but in an ironic way. It's great.
That's where I started really laughing at the end of the movie when they're doing the rowboating down the... And like he's like specifically talking about what they're doing. It's just so like crisp and good. And like, it's just like everything is... Like it's crazy. It's crazy that the studio executives didn't see this and like kind of run with it.
I know.
It's I mean, it is a weird movie.
Oh yes.
I mean, like, and it doesn't like it doesn't help you out at all. Like the sex scenes and some of the scenes, like you don't see any of the prostitutes naked, but you see the detective naked at the beginning, which I think is a really brilliant, kind of spin. Like there's this gaslighting that Louis does to the detective, like where he pretends to be paranoid in order to kind of put all of that on her and then to keep her from looking too far into what he's doing. So good. And it's like, and it's also not really called out. It's just very subtle. And then there's like these sex scenes that are filmed like from the bottom of a mattress and like
of the springs, of the bed springs, like through the, yeah.
That's the funniest song. And I don't remember if I wrote down any of the in the lyrics of that song, but like, the song starts talking about how like after they have lunch, sorting out the cheese crust. Yes. And like how we're like how the audience is titillated, but not too titillated. And we're watching like these excited bed springs. It's just, I want to go. I want the soundtrack to this. Obviously, I don't know French, so it would be lost to me. I'd have to have a sub.
It's okay. But I mean, look, I love like Francois Hardy.
Sure.
I don't know what the hell she's saying, but any like yee French pop is great.
But that to me, like again, it's so and like it really speaks to. I can't believe the Farrelly brothers haven't seen this before they did something about marriage because
they did right.
They didn't get released until 2010, right? And that was and then 2013 or 14 is when they did the restoration. But yeah, this is exactly what there's some. I mean, like, obviously this movie's funnier than There's Something About Mary in that sense of like of those songs, but it's very specifically just this, and I've never seen it done outside of these two films.
I know. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I mean, I think that something that I find, it's like, yeah, the title is a complete misdirect, right? And then we get, I mean, you brought up Hitchcock a couple times, but I think this like really swerves from that. Like it could have easily fallen into just that kind of style, but it swerves into something more where it is like a socio-political commentary. It digs into this idea that past trauma is just as important as like PTSD and the stress of work and the fact that this guy was a soldier in Algeria and now he's an executioner. Well, I mean, this is like two different roles of state-sanctioned murder. And I mean, bringing these ideas up, right? And then how he includes actual footage of the protests in the film, how he's like almost shooting like guerrilla style around the protests and then including that stuff in there, I thought was brilliant.
Like every minute has some, like when you first meet Kathy, which is the first prostitute that we see that gets killed, and she's like an expert, or she specializes in animalistic lovemaking.
Yes.
As a documentary, like just as a documentary style voiceover, reading that to you. You're also at the beginning, you only see the face. Helene is the prostitute that gets executed, and you only see the face of the priest that is giving her, absolution for these crimes. And that's so well done. And then when the police chief is talking about how when they're chasing Louis, they found out that Louis is the actual murderer, and he's like, "Don't kill him, wear him down. The blood that he bleeds will be the blood how we find him, and his he'll be so tired his hands will turn to jellyfish, and he won't be able to hold it." And this is this guy who's weirdly on crutches, like walking around his office, like eloquent, just being eloquent over the radio. And then the interviews where they're interviewing, like, and the college students, like, I don't have anything against sadists.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really care because it doesn't affect students. I'm just like, God, damn, how do you not release this movie? How does this sit? Like, even if, because he's not dead, he's still, or at least he was working until like 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do you not pick this up in the 70s or 80s or something where this gets, like, how does it take
this sit
long?
until 2010, right? And he had to encourage them to like get it out and like bring it back out. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I first watched it, I was like, I can't believe this was lost. I can't believe this was not given more attention.
I think his short before this was about cannibalism.
Yeah.
And that was like, okay, that was like actually a banned film.
Yeah.
And then this one, they were like, well, whatever. I mean, it's just, we'll just add it to your other list of banned films. And I do get it. This has a lot of like, even in French New Wave, you didn't see a lot of explicit nudity like this. There was, I mean, like, there's not, that's another thing that I really, really loved is when, what's the detective's name?
Solange.
When they're about to have sex, he has like 5 takes where he starts at her feet, and then she's like in different states of undress as he goes up her body. And of course, there's a song telling us how we're supposed to feel about all of this. I thought that was really brilliant. Like I said, there's just so much to unpack here, and like for an hour and 10-minute movie, it's just so wonderful. Like it's just so much fun to watch, and it's so like overly dramatic too when they're doing the chase scenes and he's running across rooftops. It's just like it's this weird like pseudo parody. It's like I said, it's almost like a parody of French New Wave and Psycho and all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
well, I mean, it's like this weird mix of like generic thrills with like documentary style, but also like a new wave thing. But there's also like then this callback, I think, to Les Vampires, right? The Louis Fiat film, right? The roof chases. Yes. Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. It kept me interested. Like, I mean, I know it's like 70 minutes, but still, it's just
it's so good. And I think it's one that if you see, it's like I said, this is another movie. Like to me, like this is a film like Funeral Parade of Roses, where it's just
right.
This is one and I think it's, with the Radiance release and things like that, it's a little bit more, has a little bit more notoriety, but like, yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it was when I watched it, I immediately thought of Funeral Parade of Roses and sort of an interesting conversation those two would make, back to back, right?
Yeah.
Or with each other. Yeah. Go watch it.
Go watch it. It's on Tubi, oddly enough.
Oh, is it?
Weirdly on Tubi for streaming for free.
That's weird because you know what, Screamers? I gave Jason my Blu-ray a long, long time ago.
Well, you can watch it on Tubi. It's no big deal. I'll bring it back next
I'm just kidding. Okay. Want to do the Butcher Boy?
Let's do the Butcher Boy.
All right.
In a small Irish town where I was born, there was me da and ma.
It was an awful woman, your mother.
And me best friend Joe.
Until the end of time.
What are you doing?
Jesus Christ, get out!
No boy is so bad that you can't find a scrap of goodness in him.
But pretty soon they were all after me.
Hey, fish! Fuck off!
On account of what I done on Mrs. Nugent.
Chances he got living in a pigsty. Pigs!
This little pig went to market.
So what do you think, pigs? Will Our Lady come or not?
This little pig stayed at home.
Do you think they'd ever just leave the two of us alone, eh, Dad? Just leave the two of us alone.
This little pig had roast beef.
Francis, you've unlocked something very precious.
And this little pig had none.
Hello, Francie. Hello, Our Lady. How are things? Not so bad. I was a bit worried there for a while.
The feel-good movie of the year.
It really is. I mean, look, here's the thing. Here's your basic plot, which again does not do this film justice. The antisocial son of an alcoholic father and a bipolar mother grows up in 1960s Ireland.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sinead O'Connor plays the Virgin Mary. That's really what was notable about the film at the time. Like, I mean, that was
so good, though. Yeah.
It really is. She's great.
Oh, she's fantastic. Yeah. Why would anyone be surprised by that?
Right.
Look, here's the thing. Little tangent. She never got her due.
No.
She never got her due. I hope one day she does. But the way she was, the way that she was then being treated by this sort of prince estate, maybe she won't. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, she never got her due.
I don't think this film gets its due.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
I don't feel, and Neil Jordan again has become one of those filmmakers, kind of like Neil LaBute at this point. Like, you don't really know what films he has coming out.
So I was looking back at his catalog. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, some of the stuff he's made, you're just like, this is weird that they're all made by the same guy.
Yeah.
Right. He did The Good Thief, right, with the Bob Slam, the Melville remake. He did The Crying Game, Mona Lisa, right?
Yeah.
But then he did, like, just last year, Marlowe, which was terrible.
Yeah.
But films like that. And it's just a weird collection.
I wonder if In Dreams kind of did him in and like kind of like this film gets killed because of the Jonesboro shootings. It gets released or right around the same time or like right afterwards, and so like the marketing obviously, this film culminates in a young boy. So this basically it's a young boy's descent into madness, into violence, essentially. He's from an like Brock said, he's like an alcoholic father and a suicidal mother. I think bipolar is an interesting way to like kind of, I mean, I get it, I guess, but I mean, it's an interesting, like very specific diagnosis and
which we don't really get a lot of time with her anyway.
Right.
I mean, we do sort of see like the highs and the lows where she spends she fills up the house with baked goods, right? And just won't stop. And then the next, or like a short time later, she's on top of the table ready to hang herself. So, I mean, I guess we do get the big swings, but
it seems very, I don't know, it just seems very unnecessarily specific, especially for 1950s, early 60s Ireland. To like, I don't think they were throwing around terms like bipolar, especially when they were still doing shock treatments and but this all hinges on the boy. Eamon, I think that's how you say his name, Eamon Owens.
Yeah. Francie in the story. Yeah.
Francie. And this is based on a novel, kind of a very first person-esque kind of stream of consciousness novel.
And we have this voiceover in the film kind of and I think that's directly from
it
that,
is.
right?
It is. So the person who, and I can't remember his name.
Pat McCabe, right?
Yeah, Pat McCabe.
Who played like Jack the Drunk or whatever in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He helped co-script this because it was like one of these books that was like, just like we're going to get to in a second, was kind of an unfilmable novel, really. Right. I mean, and so because of all of the voiceover and exposition, I mean, like, so, but he helped co-script it and they kept that in. They were thinking that, if they ever did make this as a movie, they'd have to jettison that, but they ended up keeping it in. And I think that really helps kind of play up to the whimsy of this story, because we're told the story from a young boy's perspective and from a young boy who's basically ostracized from everybody except from his best friend Joe, and then even then as Joe can't handle, and is most likely encouraged to stay away from Francie. So Francie goes from being a kind of a ruffian and like a ne'er-do-well, but also just kind of dealing with the fact of being, and there's probably some mental illness that's being carried on there as well.
Oh, 100%. If not like genetically passed down, then like environmentally learned.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
So he's ostracized from Harry Potter's aunt,
Fiona Shaw. It's too bad that she has been like lumped in with that, because she's fantastic. Everything she does, she's incredible in.
Yeah. It is. But it's funny to see like all of the Harry Potter people in this movie too.
Oh yeah, because Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah. And there's one other one. There's one other person that, but I can't remember now who it was. But so yeah, he ends up running away from home because after his uncle comes back and there's a big kind of dust up with his father and his mother, he runs away from home. While he's gone, his mother commits suicide. And then basically it's all kind of downhill from there. He gets sent off to he ends up beating up the boy that Joe, it basically
Fiona Shaw's
son,
kid,
right?
Yeah.
Who's kind of his nemesis in this, but the kid doesn't really do anything to him. He just doesn't like him.
Francie's a bully.
But right. Yeah. So Francie whips him with the chain, and then he gets sent off to a boys' boarding school, but it's a Catholic boys' boarding school, and he kind of takes over when he goes there, and he gets a vision of the Virgin Mary when he's out in the potato fields or whatever the fields that they're doing out.
The peat bogs.
Yeah. And then so he becomes kind of this minor celebrity in the boys' school. The stable man, the stable keeper, like kind of befriends him and is kind of like, I don't know if not conscious is not the right word, but kind of his confidant in that sense.
Yeah. Comrade in arms against the Catholic priest. Yeah.
But the main priest ends up molesting him, dressing him up in a bonnet that was his mother's bonnet, and then these people walk in on him, and then so they basically tell him to go home.
Well, Francie stabs him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
he stabs him with like a fountain pen, like in his neck, but he stabs him because like he's
being molested, right?
Yeah, and then the other priest, Brendan Gleeson, knows this, and it's like, oh, it looks like you're getting out of here, Francie.
Right. So
but you're not going to say anything.
They send him back home under the auspices that he won't tell anybody what happened there. Yeah. So he goes and works. Now he's a full-on butcher boy because he works in this like
the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, slaughterhouse where they're killing pigs, and then at that point he ends up. Joe's no longer his best friend. Joe ends up befriending the Francis.
I forget the other kid's name.
What is his name?
Philip.
Yeah.
Right. Philip gave him a goldfish. Gave Joe a goldfish.
Goldfish. Yeah.
Francie told Joe not to worry about the goldfish. It's okay. I understand, Joe. You had to take it.
Right. And so, yeah, and then so
you
Francie
forgot that Stephen Ray, his trumpet playing dad, dies.
Oh, that's right. That's
in
right.
the house.
That's the one part I forget. Yeah, his dad's a drunk, and he's of ill health. That happens so weirdly fast.
I know.
And it's so
he sort of coughs, and we see this, and then he's just
dead in a chair.
So
Francis starts to really kind of lose his marbles. He's like he doesn't turn his dad. He doesn't reveal that his dad's dead, he ends up staying in the house. And then, Francie ends up shooting Philip's mom in the neck because Joe and Philip, Joe
with a
butcher gun or with bolt gun.
I like that butcher gun. Okay, yeah. That's like from West Side Story. Then when you use butcher guns, we'll use butcher guns.
Right.
And then chops her up.
Right. So Joe and Philip go off to boarding school together. Francie tries to go and get Joe to be his friend again. But Joe tells him that he's not his friend. So he goes back to become a butcher again. And then he ends up killing Philip's mom with a butcher gun, and chops her up and puts her in with all the rotted cabbage and carrots.
All of the slop for the pigs. Yeah. And
then the cops come and arrest him. And then he spends the rest of his life in jail until he gets out as an old man. And now he looks like his father.
Weird. Yeah. Looks just like Stephen Ray with like red hair.
Right.
Who knew?
Yeah. And then he's, good old Francie, good guy Francie gets to live in a halfway house after he's been let out after he's not.
But he's still talking to the Virgin Mary.
Look, this movie all hinges on Eamon Owen's performance.
That's what I wrote too.
It is terrible that this is the year that, Miramax basically buys the Oscars, right? This is Shakespeare in Love year.
Yep.
This is Affliction year. Not that Affliction's not worthy, but the fact that this movie doesn't get recognized and this kid doesn't get recognized, like this, no hyperbole, this is one of the best performances of a kid,
it's really
not just of any actor. And like to have the entirety of this movie right on his shoulders
and no experience.
Right. It's he's
a non-actor, right?
Like it's crazy how good he is and how, obviously Ray's voiceover really helps. But that doesn't take away from what this kid is able to do and able to portray. And like just the kind of abandon that he attacks this role with, and turns a character who shouldn't be lovable, right, into this anti-hero that you root for.
Yeah.
Obviously this kid's been put upon and had trauma and trouble and doesn't deserve the things that have happened to him. But also he turns to violence and murder.
Yeah.
As a reflection of the society that's happening at the moment as well. So
I was going to say, there's so much, the other stuff going on in this film is his sort of influence, or the influence he takes from the nuclear age, right? And the sci-fi he sees on TV, or the explosions, right? Or the fear of explosion, the fear of sort of like the Cold War. Was there like a duck and cover ad?
Yeah.
Right. So there was
when he goes into the TV, there's a duck and cover.
Yeah. So there's that. There's like thoughts of aliens and even like cowboys and stuff on TV. So he's all of this stuff going on, in his imagination, is also then being, I think, fueled further by the trauma that he's undergoing as well.
Right. And so those are the things that end up raising him in essence, right? He's raised on pop culture. He's raised on...
Yeah, it's like a Simpsons episode.
Right. He's raised on fear. And then the only people that should be authority figures in his life are evil. They're just, crazy. They're just,
like his parents, his parents have issues, but the community just kind of, this is where, this is a film about how we kind of ultimately fail each other, right? About how those around us who should help us then, turn on us and shake their head and sort of tisk us, right? When we kind of go off the rails. I always knew that one. Well, if you always knew, why the fuck didn't you do something, right?
Right.
Why didn't you step in to help? I think that's a big part of what goes on here. It turns this idea of victimization and sort of victim blaming at the same time.
I think my favorite scene is the scene where Francis goes into the, he's now the butcher boy and he's got the pig's head.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's with the three women that are always kind of giving him guff, but love him at the same time. Yeah. And he kind of turns in a Joe Pesci sense of
I'm a ticket, am I?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a clown. Am I a clown?
What kind of ticket?
I fucking amuse you.
Yeah. Yeah. A ticket for the bus. Right.
Yeah, the kid's so quick-witted and like so like just yeah, it's so.
And then he's like, "Oh, I'm just that Francie gotcha."
And they all like nervously laugh and kind of like
I was gonna say that was a scene that really stood out to me too, and I think a scene where I don't think it works nearly as well if we don't have that kind of voiceover that almost like smooths everything out, right? Or makes everything kind of palatable,
right?
Because of sort of the joviality that voiceover comes across with. And so we see scenes like that and we're not sort of as taken aback. It's not as dark as it could be.
Right. And the voiceover takes a different meaning once you know the ending of the film, right? So now that you know that Francie's basically telling you his story, and I love too when the voiceover and Francis start arguing with one another. And the voiceover's almost scared of young Francis too. I mean, out of all of Jordan's films, I really like The Good Thief. I really like The Crying Game. I think this is, if not his best film, I mean, in his top 3. I mean, like, it's so, and it's weird that it doesn't get much recognition. Like, it's not one of the ones that I don't think people go back to this one. I mean, like, and I know Michael Collins and there's different reasons that certain ones do, obviously Interview with the Vampire is the big money maker and things like that. But I think that these movies that, where he does have them set in Ireland and kind of a more personal stories to him are really, really good. Yeah. And this one in particular, I think, and obviously, I mean, like I said, because of Eamon, that this movie is just, is really next level. And I was going to say, like, I mean, I think that's something that I made a note of, was that this film is really, like, it's so good because of those performances. And, I think a lesser film would slide into a kind of didacticism or sentimentality, but this one sort of really just kind of toes that line, right? So there has to be a certain amount of it, but too much, right, would tip the scales. And I think this does a nice job of sort of balancing that. Right, because you never get the sense that Francis feels sorry for himself, right? You never get the sense that he is hurt in a lot of situations. But even when his dad is dead, or his mom is dead, or his mom is off to the garage that's where he's calling you when you have a breakdown. That's where you go. Right. Yeah.
That makes sense.
That he never, and I know a lot of it is an act, but like there's a sequence when Philip's uncles are beating up Francis and they're holding Joe back and they're asking Joe, why you're hanging out with him. And he's like, he's not my friend. And, he made me do this. And Francis is like, well, why'd you have to say that? You couldn't have said something else, Joe. You didn't have to tell him you weren't my friend. You could have told him something else. Yeah. And so that's why I think that's also what makes this movie so powerful, is that all of this that this kid is carrying is just so palpable.
There's a lot of weight and a lot of rage.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought up Philip's uncles, because we haven't touched on the fact that Fiona Shaw sends her grown brothers. These are men, probably, well, they're Irish, so they look like they're in their 40s. They might be in their 20s. I'm kidding. But these guys are grown men, and they're going after an 11-year-old. I mean, right? He's like 11, 12. The second time they go after him, right? And this is the scene you're talking about where Joe's like, oh, he's not my friend. Francie gets a rock, and he takes these two grown men down. And I'm like, wow, these are bad henchmen. Right? These are not very good. Right? You're not very good at your job if that's what it is. But I mean, that rage that comes out of him because of all this stuff, I mean, that's where it came from, right? I mean, it's sort of lashing out in that violent manner when someone is sort of besetting violence upon you. Yeah, I mean, the kid is, it's heartbreaking. It is a heartbreaking but also hilarious kind of story.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I think this film kind of tricks you into, like, because I think it really, not going in, if you hadn't read the novel, not going in and knowing where this is going to end up, this is a whimsical, Dennis the Menace kind of,
it's kind of Python-esque. Yeah. I mean, in its sort of use of like kind of goofy sounds, and like even just the set design feels like something from like...
Well, yeah, because you get a lot of the kind of superimposed imagery.
And it's gray.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of...
Yeah. And he has, an imagination that affords him the big bug heads and the gifts that he brings his mom coming to life. And so there's a lot of, a child's imagination that's displayed here. So I think it kind of lulls you to sleep that when the final murder does come and he just grabs Fiona by the neck and puts a bolt through, it's like, don't. And what's so great about that scene is that at that moment, that's really the only moment where he's like, you got the best of me, but fuck you.
Yeah.
He's like, don't worry, you won. Joe's gone.
Yep.
Joe's out of my life.
Yep.
And he shoots her, and it's just, and then he just goes straight into hacking her up, and it's just, and at that point he's back to being Francie.
Mm-hmm.
He's back to talking about how he has to bury her deep inside the cabbages and the carrots, and and then when he gets captured by the cops, he takes them back to the same place where he beat Philip with the chain.
He does the same trick.
Does the same thing with the cops. And it doesn't, none of it really, even when he's being taken off to prison, he's like, it's like, I guess you're going to hang me, right? And he's like, well, we don't do hangings anymore. It's like, what the hell is this country coming to?
Anything else about The Butcher Boy? It was really good. I mean, it's one of Jordan's films I hadn't seen. So thank you.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So speaking of Merry Christmas, should we do Morvern Callar and the Christmas gift she got?
Yes. Let's move into that.
Okay.
Even though it's not in alphabetical order.
Well, you just mentioned that because this was a novel, right?
True.
Was unfilmable. And so I thought we were going that way, and I thought you were then using the T for the lost skeleton.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's use that.
See, I can improvise when you throw things like that out there.
Hello? Who? No, this is Morvern Callar. Morvern Callar? M-O-R-V? Well, I do books myself because it's got a lot to offer me. It's gone where? It's left me. I mean, when you're writing, you can just knock off when you want, you know. Look out the window. Smoke a cigarette, make a cup of coffee, take a shower. Better than waking up on cold mornings knowing it's 39 years to go to a pension, yeah? So when do I get the money?
We're going to talk about this in a few seconds, this other film that was a novel that's unfilmable.
Look, when I say a few seconds, I mean in this podcast parlance, it's a good day or two from now.
Look, time is a construct.
Yes, let's go with Morvern Callar.
All right, after her beloved boyfriend's suicide, a morning supermart worker and her best friend hit the road in Scotland, but find that grief is something that you can't run away from forever. And that, again, right, does not tell anything about what's going on in this film.
No.
This is one reason I like to just pull sort of like these quotes from like IMDb or somewhere, because I'm like, this does not describe the film at all. I'm like, what?
I would take umbrage with the beloved boyfriend.
I know.
I don't think beloved is an actual right term.
But this, it's such a, I mean, what a way to open this movie with her. Well, we see her caressing this body, and then we start to see little inclinations that this body is not a live body. And then we see the Christmas tree, like blinking. And so he's almost under the tree, which, I mean, okay, right? Read into that whatever you want. But I love this opening. It's just, it's so dark and so delicious. And
yeah, no, everything about this movie for this, like, and again, if you look at Lynn Ramsey's first film, Ratcatcher, which is a good film, and some would argue a better film than this, but it's so much more succinct, and I haven't seen it in probably since it came out, but it's so much more pat. It's just it doesn't have any sort of ambiguity to it. This
is all ambiguity,
right? This is a crazy second film.
I know.
So it is, and again, I know you're coming from a different source. You're coming from a source material that you have that is a stream of consciousness novel, but still, like, to be able to have the confidence to put that to film and to not take her. And see, that's the thing that this film does that the Butcher Boy did, that doesn't do, that the Butcher Boy did, was doesn't have any voiceover. And I think it would have been so easy to lean into that. I think it would have been so easy to have that type of American Psycho-esque kind of like voiceover that lets you know the inner monologue. The fact that we don't makes it so much better. Because again, you don't have any idea where Samantha Morton's character, very, very little about where she's coming from, right? You know that she's a supermarket stalker, and that's it. Yeah. And you know that she likes raves, and that's really all you know.
And we know, I mean, we get a glimpse of what this life is like, right? It's work a day, right? It is the bluest of blue collar kind of works, right? I mean, she goes to work at a supermarket, she goes to the pub, she goes to work, she goes to that's it, right? There's nothing else going on in this small, I mean, it's not Glasgow. It's too small to be Glasgow, right? But yeah, I mean, it's just such a small town and such an almost like destitute population, really. Okay, so she finds her dead boyfriend, and he leaves her a note and says, well, we kind of see bits and pieces of the note more as we go, but he's like, look, here's my novel. This fucking conceit, right? He's like, I just wrote this novel. Here's a list of publishers that I think, would be good for. Take it, right? Sell it, see what you can get. He's like, I also left money for the funeral in the bank account, right?
Yeah. Sorry I did this. It seemed like a good thing at the time. It seemed like the thing to do.
All right. It seemed like the right thing to do. Be brave. But what she does, right? One, she takes all the money, right? And tells everyone he left her.
This is a weird double feature with Butcher Boy, by the way. There's strange parallels from the book to the not voiceover to the dead person, staying,
getting chopped up,
but also the dead person staying in the apartment for an overly long amount of time.
Elongated time. Right. So she tells people that he left. She eventually sort of chops him up and buries him in the mountain, takes his name off the novel, puts hers on it, and sends it off. And then goes to her friend and say, hey, I just bought us a 2-week getaway, right, to Spain or whatever it was, right? Or either we're leaving in 2 weeks. I don't know. It's in Scottish. I can't understand how right? Dude. I know. Well, I was just going to say, like, there's not a whole lot of talking in this film.
Right.
And I'm kind of thankful for that.
Yeah.
Because there are moments where I'm like, wow.
At home listener, make sure you get the subtitled versions of Butcher Boy and
So here we are denigrating the Irish and the Scottish today. They're the same people.
It's a train spotting situation.
Yeah, no, it is. It's English, really heavy.
But,
especially her friend's name is Lana, but not Kate Middleton, Kate McDermott.
What a role it would have been for her.
Right? She just would have been walking around asking what like skin color people are. Sorry if you haven't. Look, the racist royals. Okay, so yeah, Kathleen McDermott.
Who was not an actress as well.
Right, this was like her first role, wasn't it? Yeah. And they both received, I think, several awards from different, smaller festivals or whatever. But yeah, so she sends off this novel, and it gets, the publisher's like, yeah, we love it, right? We want to publish it. She's like, cool, I'm going to Spain on holiday. So
right, you won't be able to reach.
I don't know. I can't go to London, right? Which is just, but again, I mean, talk about like bug nuts premises, and this is one of the most. But I absolutely love it, and love the question too about a kind of artistic theft, maybe. Like, what does she, because it starts to raise questions. What does she owe this guy? How does she feel about this guy? What is this, what was this relationship? And I'm jumping kind of ahead, but there's a line at the end where she and Lana kind of split up in Spain. She comes back and she gets this $100,000 advance for the novel. And they're like, oh, so what's your next novel? Knowing, like, we know she's going to disappear, right? She's gone. She goes back to her friend and she's trying to convince her to go somewhere with her. And her friend's like, what are you doing? It's the same crap everywhere. Stop dreaming. And at that moment, you get the feeling that people have been telling her that for a long, long time.
Right.
And that, maybe her boyfriend was living out his dreams while keeping hers kind of at bay. And this is a sort of freedom now, right? Now that he's gone, she can go do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the feeling that, she liked him for his music collection and his musical tastes more
Which
than
is good.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
It's a valid reason to love someone.
Yeah.
There's also the line when she's talking to the publishers and she's like, why do you like being a novelist? She's like, because I can bug off work whenever I want, and I can go to, I can do whatever the hell I want to do. I can work when I want to work, and I don't. This idea of this kind of like supposed classism that most likely existed in a relationship, and like the most likely that he's the one who has a bank account, right? He's the one who has the bank card. He's probably the one whose apartment it is.
Yeah.
And so this life that she leads that is a kind of, I'm going to take what's given to me and fuck you if you don't like it. I mean, like, this is, why wouldn't I? What you left, and it's not like she's, she justifies it, or if she ever thinks about justifying it, he wrote in the suicide note that it's for you. It's for you. The book is, I wrote it for you.
Yeah.
And so, and he says,
interpret that how you will. Right.
And so, if it's hers, then why wouldn't she do what she wants to do with it, right? And live the life that she wants to live. And
for once.
Right. And to react to the, to the suicide in the way that she wants to react to it. She obviously seems, the thing that she keeps coming back to, and, she sits, there's a moment as the dead body is decomposing in her apartment where she's unwrapping her Christmas presents under the tree.
Yeah.
And of course, he gives her a Walkman
and a mixtape.
And so that's what she has strapped to her body as she's chopping him up in the bathtub, listening to that as he's become too smelly at this point, and she has to dispose of the body and go and bury him with this very small trowel at the top of a hill, which will take him a whole lot of time. And of course, there's moments where I think it doesn't, that portion of it. I think it's kind of silly to pay too close attention to those types of details, but of course you're not going to cut somebody with a kitchen knife, but whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. What did you think of the film stock and the color change when they get to Spain? Like there's a significant palette change, like when she kind of breaks out of that Glasgow,
I mean, it goes from very dark,
right,
to this sort of bright, sunny. I mean,
you get the feeling that she's never been out of the city, right? That the idea of like this expressionism that she has and that she can find with raves and the drugs and the music, and the reason that she likes this guy is because he's an artist and he has a good musical taste. That now that she's finally afforded the ability to kind of branch out, that this is a eye-opening.
Yes. I mean, it's literally shedding light on things, right? I mean, look, even I'm trying to think, in Scotland, there's like the briefest of moments when they're in the daylight. They are not in the daylight very often, right?
Right.
I mean, it's dark. It's dark when she finds him. It's dark when she goes to think about making a call to report about his body. It's dark when she goes to the pub. It's dark the next day. It's dark when they go out. There's only one moment when they're walking home after a party, right? Where it's bright, where it's daylight, and it's still a dull daylight.
Well, it's also
right?
like what one of the things that she does with the camera is it's all very, especially when you're in, when you're there in Scotland, it's all. There's a lot of close-ups. It's all very oppressive. It's all very,
closed in,
right?
And yeah, like the sky is a ceiling pressing down on you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then we get out to Spain, and it opens up, right? But we still get this, there's still this interesting kind of aspect of they're never too far from their own, quote unquote, their own. And they're around English guys, right?
Right.
In bucket hats, because it is the 90s, right? And they're probably listening to like Stone Roses and shit, right? Anyway.
We're going to badmouth Stone Roses.
No. I mean, I like Stone Roses, but I'm just thinking of like, the Manchester bands that all wear bucket hats, right? So that's all. That's all. But we still get this scene where they're playing like this tourist game where a guy and a girl get into a big bag and they have to like exchange clothing, right?
Right.
That first moment is really weird.
Yeah.
Right? The couple that comes out of this bag, they don't look. They just look haunted.
Right. Yeah. And especially the girl. Like, it looks like this is like something that sounded like a lot of fun. And then like neither one of them really wanted to do it.
Right.
Especially as she's standing topless and like, and now being stared at by all these men.
Mm-hmm. And so there's still this kind of attitude, right? Of what am I doing? What are we doing? And yes, it's eye-opening. It sheds light on things. And there is a kind of hint about being less repressed, right? Or freer. But it's always, I don't know, perilous, right? It always feels like just a step, just like one step removed from that oppressiveness that was Scotland.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing too is that she's always trying to tell people the truth. So as much as she's trying to escape or sort of like run away or sort of, like into something new, she's like always telling people the truth and no one listens.
Right.
At one point she says to her friend, he's dead. And she's just like, whatever. Right.
Right.
And then she says to the publishers, the representatives from the publishers, she's like, I work in a supermarket. And they're like, you're so funny.
She's like, take a picture. Yeah.
Okay. But there's that too, where there's this moment of wanting to escape, but trying to figure out how to escape, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of her the act of a suicide and still being told what to do.
Yeah.
That act of a suicide and that being the freeing moment of her of fuck you, you're not going to tell me what to do anymore.
Right.
Now I have some of and so, who knows what this relationship was, and whether or not it was beloved or whether, but, almost in a weird sense of, you can a spin or a take on the opening scene is her caressing the body of kind of thanking him for doing this for her.
He's literally a present.
Right. And then of course you have the horror of the act and the dead body in your apartment, but how to handle all of that. But then when you realize that no one's asking questions and no one really cares, and that all of this, what opens it up to her, it's just look, as good as Eamon is in Butchered Boy, and I know they're not the same age, but Samantha Morton in this time in her career, not that she's never great, but
she wasn't great in The Whale.
True. I feel like she's kind of like, when I saw her in The Sweet and Lowdown, I thought, well, this is the next huge star. She's amazing. I love that movie, and I love her in it. And the fact that she was nominated but didn't win, I don't even remember who won that year, but I was just blown away. And I feel like she's kind of gotten pigeonholed into these sad old white lady roles.
Yep.
And it's weird.
Yeah.
I have not followed everything that she's done, but ever since she did Minority Report, now she's kind of in this like, well, it's whenever you need someone who speaks with an accent and can dress, in, depressing clothing, and look forlorn, Samantha Morton is your go-to.
Yeah.
And I think that sucks because I think she's so, I think she's great, but I think she's so great in this. And it's, I always get her confused with Emily Watson too.
Yes.
But
yes, I know. I do too.
But yeah, it's her, as you watch her nonverbal kind of realizations in this movie about how she no longer has to be beholden to this man, and she no longer really has to be beholden to her friend.
Yeah.
And as she walks off and she grabs the only things that are meaningful to her and ends the movie as kind of an ambiguous, what's going to happen to her next. But it doesn't really matter. It's just the world's literally her oyster. So this feels like I mentioned American Psycho, but this feels like a better filmed version of every Bret Easton Ellis novel. Like this feels like an evolution of that type of storytelling. And this is a precursor to Decorno and I'm not sure if I'm not saying her name, Tatane and Raw.
Yeah.
And I think this would play and that, even like Sean Baker to a certain extent.
Sure.
Like this kind of like
and it's also this sort of like cinema verite style as well. Yeah.
I think this would play really well as a double feature with Glazer's Under the Skin.
Oh yeah,
I think that kind of her finding herself in the world and the kind of like there's more verbal,
right.
There's more verbal portions of this movie than there are in Under the Skin, of course. Yeah. But this,
I thought you were going to say the other Scarlett Johansson sort of coming of age film at that time, which was Lucy.
Yeah, that's great. Another filmmaker who Luc
Besson makes trash, but it's cool trash.
Yeah, I guess so.
The Fifth Element isn't cool.
I like the.
Okay.
Look, there are movies that I like of his a lot.
Yeah,
but
they're still trash.
I had to sit through Valerian, and that was a rough sit.
Okay, look, you don't have to sit through things like that. You can get up.
I feel like this is your therapy session with me. Look, you don't have to.
Look,
You've paid your ticket.
Jason, I understand. I understand. Yeah, you've already thrown that away. You're not getting it back no matter what. Yeah. Okay.
Look, Valerian had a promise, and then it had Dane DeHaan and
lots of movies have promises.
Very good point. But yes, it would be a great companion piece to Lucy.
No, I'm sorry. I just. Every time I think of Under the Skin, I think of Lucy because they were like right at the same time.
Right.
And it's ScarJo's.
What a weird movie.
Which one?
I mean, both. But like Lucy, just in general. Like anytime you have those type of like Limitless type movies.
Oh yeah.
It's such a it's to see where doesn't she become like some sort of like collective consciousness at the end of that, like where it's
yes, yeah.
It's been a minute since I've seen it,
right? No, right.
I can't remember now exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there for a while it was on like
right.
FX. It was like a cable staple, right? But yeah, no, she is basically like uploaded into the Matrix or something by like Morgan Freeman,
right?
Okay, look, let's wrap up this unwrapping with I'm so sorry. With the lost skeleton.
Don't apologize.
Of Cadavra. I was apologizing to myself.
It also works well with this movie because it's very punny in all the best ways.
Okay, look, I didn't put a synopsis for this.
Betty, you know what this meteor could mean to science. It could mean actual advances in the field of science.
Aliens? Us? Is this one of your Earth jokes?
May God have mercy on us all.
The lost skeleton of Cadavra, but you will. You will.
Here's the thing. But I do want to say this, right? And then you can give a synopsis or whatever. But this film is made by people who are good enough at being bad that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is like, it's really, I know it's supposed to be like a spoof of the B movies from like the 50s and kind of like an Ed Wood sort of spoof, right? I mean, but this is almost like a spoof of the spoofs.
Yeah, I would call this kind of a antithesis to what the Mystery Science Theater guys were doing. Yeah. And also like I would call this more of a love letter and an ode to these films. And it really is more of yes, it is a spoof. But I do think that this, I saw, I've read about this and like the people, that's a fine line to pull when to try to force, being a cult film or
right.
And I don't think that that's what this film is doing. I mean, I do think that there's an Airplane top secret level of this movie.
Okay, so I don't think there is.
You don't?
No. What I mean is, I think it goes beyond that.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's gone into like straight up like meta spoofness. Right. Okay. So what I mean, I think is like Airplane was like this studio type spoof. I mean, it was like, look, we're going to take these disaster films and we're going to play it straight.
Right.
Right. But we know it's funny, but we're going to tackle it like it is one of these things and we're going to go with it. And it's like, it's a real thing. Where I think these guys were like, no. We are going to show you the wires that pull the skeleton up. We are going to make sure you see them so you know what we're doing here. I think that's what I mean. Because I kept wondering in my head, like, what would this look like if they did it like Airplane?
Right, sure.
If they said, okay, we know this is a spoof, but right, we're going to play it like it's a straight movie, like it is one of these things.
Right.
And I was like, what would that look like? But that's not what they're trying to do. I don't think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're jumping that, right, and moving like 12 steps beyond. Because it's so knowing. It is
right,
so, yeah.
Right,
okay.
right. But I will say that the dialogue lends itself to, like this dialogue wouldn't exist in those 50s movies.
No, but that's the point,
like you
right?
wouldn't get Amish terrarium in those 50s movies.
No, but that's like the whole thing is like, but aren't they like calling attention to like the banality and stupidness of and so like they're really going with it, right? I mean, like, what does he say at one point? He's like, he just keeps talking about how he's going to do science.
He's
right?
a scientist.
And
he
like,
does science.
I'm going to do some good science, and it's just. Have you seen BoJack Horseman?
Yes.
You know the three kids, right? And they work at business. It's that. Right. I mean, it is literally that. What did you do today? I did business. Because business is my job. And it's like this guy, like, hey, I'm here to do science. I don't believe in anything. That's why I'm a scientist.
So I'll give you the rundown of what the lost skeleton of Cadavra means or is about. So we have, I think his name is Paul Armstrong, Dr. Paul. I couldn't remember now.
I'm reading some of these quotes.
The quotes are great.
Sorry.
If you want
Paul Armstrong. Yeah.
Okay. So Dr. Paul Armstrong and his wife Betty they're going on a mission to find a meteor that is landed in the woods, because he's hoping that it's made of this element called atmospherium. Now, he's a scientist, he does science, and if the meteor is made of atmospherium, then it will help advance science, and that's the reason he's going out there to find it.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Like there's such a knowingness in these, like, in this dialogue, and they say it straight, but there's also this kind of like, you guys know what we're doing here, right?
At the same time, there are two aliens who crash land on Earth, Crowbar and Lattice. And they need the atmospherium to... They're carrying a mutant on board their ship, as they kind of keep him as a pet.
Yeah.
And they need the atmospherium to repair their ship so they can return home to their home planet. Now they have a atmospherium meter, or a finder that will allow them to find it. They also have a gun that allows them to manipulate. It's a caulk gun that allows them to manipulate the things around them. In addition to, we have a kind of an Indiana Jones type figure who is looking for this lost skeleton of Cadavra.
Well, he's the evil.
He's the he's the evil.
Dr. Roger Fleming.
And so he's off looking for the lost skeleton of Cadavra. Now he stumbles upon the aliens, and as well as Dr. Palmer Armstrong and his wife Betty. But he's trying to get the atmospherium to reanimate the lost skeleton of Cadavra for some unknown reason.
There's also Ranger Brad.
And Ranger Brad, who's seen things. He's seen a bear do things that, well, even a bear wouldn't do. There's Ranger Brad. There's also the guy who tells them how to get to the cabin, and it's like go down to Death Forest and like
it's all of these like ominous places.
And what was one of the lines? I forget what Paul was talking about when he was talking to Ranger Brad. He's like, oh, have you heard the legend of the lost skeleton of Cadavra? And he's like, I don't believe in that. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in
anything. Ranger Brad, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in anything.
So, what was the Indiana Jones guy's name? Ralph.
I know. Fleming, Dr. Fleming, Roger Fleming.
Roger Fleming. So he.
There must be a way inside that cabin. Think, cabin.
So Roger Fleming utilizes the caulk gun of the aliens to help create an assistant for him out of 4 woodland creatures, who comes to life as this sexy woman who he calls Animala, who can only speak in animal terms, eventually when she wants to anyway. So she's like, row. And he has to teach her to be a human. So the doctor and his wife and the aliens and Animala and Ralph all come together in the cabin, and they're all trying to kind of assess one another in order to get the atmospherium. And at this point, Roger. Paul and Betty already have the atmospherium. They already have the meteor. They have it on a dinner plate.
Right.
That they hope that the cabin owners don't mind that they have it.
And he's doing science.
And he's doing science with it. He's also a meteorologist, not a meteorologist. No, what is it? It's something like that. He's a meteorologist, not a meteorologist.
Because that's people actually.
People get that.
That's confused. A weatherman.
So this movie is a love letter to the 50s B movies that they don't make really. I mean, obviously they don't make them anymore, but like the things like Trog, and it came from outer space, and Earth versus the Flying Saucers, right? I mean, like, yeah, and then to the farther extent, but like all of the sets are all of the special effects are terrible. The mutant is made up of carpet and a big mask,
and you just see the guy's legs,
right? And the lost skeleton of Cadavra is just a legit like toy skeleton that's being moved along with visible fishing lines.
Yeah. I sleep now.
The one that made me laugh. So I saw this in the theaters, but my favorite was when Roger's teaching Animala how to be a human, and he's like teaching her how to drink out of a glass, and he's like, here, you just pick it up and you tip 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 tip. And so the aliens see Animala acting and they are like, okay, all we got to do is act like the humans, and they won't suspect anything. And so Animala takes the glass and she's like tip 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 tip, and they take the glass and tip 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 tip.
And when she goes to eat, she plants her face in the plate. It's like ah. They're like, so they do the same thing.
And Paul and Betty are clueless, and she's the typical housewife trope.
She says moons, teaspoons. That's all gibberish to me, I'm afraid.
So they both they at some point they all try to manipulate each other to get the atmospherium. At one point, they're both trying to use mind control to get atmospherium, and they're telling Animala and Betty Roger's trying to get her to. Who's trying to use? Roger's using mind control from the cadaver skeleton.
So the skeleton. So the aliens are trying to control Animala, and then the skeleton is trying to control Betty.
Right. And so do you have the line?
Well, I have this. The skeleton's like, I cannot wait so long. She will help me. The housewifely one. Hi, Betty.
So at some point they're talking about atmospherium, and I think Animala is the one who's like who mispronounces it as an Amish terrarium.
Amish terrarium. Oh wait, you must find the atmospherium. Amish terrarium. Must find Amish terrarium. I don't understand. Why does she need an Amish terrarium?
Like, do we keep Amish people in glass cases?
Like, don't the Amish live in open air like us? Of course, Betty. It's absurd. Putting the Amish in glass cases would be inhumane.
So there's so many lines. Like, hey, look, your mileage is going to vary whether you buy into this movie or not. Like, and you'll very quickly know whether it's a movie for you. And I will say, to its detriment, it does go on probably about 10 to 15. This could be tightened up.
Yeah.
Like this really should be a quick 80 minutes rather than 90.
It's like 90. Yeah.
But there are moments that are so laugh out loud funny when Animala starts to dance, and then when the skeleton of Cadavra finally comes to life, and he's just this skeleton that's like just kind of moving along the screen. It's so funny. And then when they're trying to get the skeleton to like climb walls and move around on its own, and they're clearly carrying it between the two of them. And like I said, everyone plays it completely straight, and not Leslie Nielsen in Airplane straight. They play it completely straight.
Right.
Now, of course, a lot of the dialogue that they're saying is completely nonsensical, and they know it's nonsensical. I mean, but go and read the quotes page on IMDb, and it doesn't really work. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but like just that whole Amish terrarium thing, or like I've seen a bear do things even a bear wouldn't do. And things, just like I'm doing science and
well, I suppose if I'd wanted a safe life, I wouldn't have married a man who studies rocks.
Right. Yeah. Why put our lips together when we can touch other things?
No. It's like, why? Wait, what did they say? Like, why hold hands when we can touch other things? Like lips.
Yeah.
Oh, I found the farmer quote with the directions. Stay on this road here, past Dead Man's Curve. You'll come to an old fence called the Devil's Fence. From there, go on foot till you come to a valley known as the Cathedral of Lost Soap. Smack in the center is what they call Forgetful Milkman's Quadrangle. Stay right on the path of Staring Skulls, and you come to a place called Death Clearing. Cabin's right there. Can't miss it.
Let me see if I can find the one I was looking for. Just shit like, even when I was a child, I was afraid of. I was hated by skeletons. Skeleton hates me. Oh, and so Crowbar and Lattice are the aliens, and and so they don't really understand human nature. But there's one sequence where Lattice has done something. I can't remember what now. And she's like, crowbar. And he's like, what is it, my woman? you need not yell because of my proximity. Goes, I yell not from the volume required by great distance, but by happy excitement. So this is the point that I was trying to talk about before, when the skeleton is using mind control for Betty and Crowbar is using mind control for Betty. So the skeleton says, bring the meteor to the skeleton. And Crowbar's like, bring the atmospherium to Crowbar and Lattice. And Betty says, I must make a skeleton meteor using a crowbar covered in lettuce. I know this sounds like we're fucking high. Like this, none of this makes sense, but like, it's such a silly, fun like movie, and I do think it skirts that line of like, I don't think that this is trying to be, it's not trying to be so bad it's good type of movie. This is not trying to be whatever The Room is doing now.
Right.
This is not trying to be that. I know The Room wasn't trying to be this, but whatever the next thing that they're trying to do, I think trying to milk out of him. That this is not that. This is a love letter to these movies, and like I said, they do it so straight faced. It's
that's what I mean. Like, this is made by people who clearly know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. Like, I mean, it was thoroughly enjoyable, and you watch it and you just go, okay, these people are good enough to sort of know like exactly what they're doing here. So no, I don't think that's like, oh, let's make something so bad that it actually is good. I think they have real intentionality behind this. And like I said, that's why I kind of jumped to this meta level of this. Like, no, this is what it would look like. This is how, let's kind of spoof the dialogue, but the sentiment of what they would say in the original is what they're saying here. Right.
Yeah.
How do you say his last name? Blaumeyer?
Your guess is as good as mine.
The director. So this is something else about this guy, is that he has some real accolades to his name.
Yeah.
He was, especially as like a playwright and a stage actor in Boston, got a lot of good press. Positive critical response from the Globe, the Herald, and the Phoenix. That's not nothing, mm-hmm. right? And played roles like R.P. McMurphy in Cuckoo's Nest and Hotspur and Henry IV Part 1. And again, like, got praise for these things. So they know what they're doing. They're not, these are not hacks per se. Right.
Yeah. And he's made there is a sequel to this. And then they tried to kickstart. I don't know what happened to the Kickstarter. I couldn't find it I didn't really look that hard online, so let's just be honest. They were trying to kickstart a third one in the trilogy, but he's made other films that are kind of like this in the same vein.
Well, and he had a play that was produced called The Bride of the Mutant's Tomb, right? Which is centered around an Ed Wood-like director trying to get this film made.
Right.
And so, I think, he kind of had this stuff in mind, like as, from early childhood, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if you stumbled upon this and obviously that this is done enough to know that it's laughable, but this isn't far off from these movies and these sets and these, and
well, and they filmed in, what is it, Bronson Canyon, which was where a lot of those movies were shot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not to sound like preachy movie knowledge guy, but pre-TV, the B-bill of all of, they don't make them anymore, right? They don't make movies that are intentionally meant to be on the bottom half of a bill of a double feature that can be repackaged and renamed and the ones, like some people know the ones, like that kind of bubbled up at the top and became something more than what they intended to be, but there's a shit ton. You go out, they're all mostly, in the public domain at this point, but there's a ton of these shitty, and then, things like the Mystery Science Theater Group brought a lot of them to light. Things like, Man of Sands of Fate was not a B movie. That was just that was a Z movie, right? But EGA and Zat and all these just whatever name you want to throw at, those are legit movies. These monster movies that were, like the Joe Dante's Matinee kind of thing, where they were just they just sat on the bottom bill of a double feature that you'd go to because you didn't have anything else to watch on TV. And then eventually these movies started getting made for TV. So studios stopped making them because they didn't need 300 films a year. They only needed 100 or less, and out of a total of Hollywood, right? I mean, there wasn't. But prior to that, shit, they were churning out films every single week, and just that was the content that they needed, right? Because they all the studio houses owned their own theaters for the most part,
right?
And they needed to get butts in the seats.
Yep. And this would be a way to do it.
But yeah,
I'd go see this.
I saw it when it came out, and really, really dug it. And like I said, it's kind of again, your mileage may vary on how much you like this. And then, like I said, I think I can see very quickly not thinking this was funny at the beginning. Like, I don't know, like we're just kind of we're just trying to we're feeling it's trying to be intentionally bad. But I think if you give it through the entirety of the movie, I think you kind of get what they're going for.
I think after a few minutes, after like 10 minutes, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand the rhythms. I get what's going on here.
Right.
Okay, now I'm along for the ride.
I mean, as soon as you get the farmer telling them where to go, I think that's like.
I mean, even when like they're looking at the map, and it's just all of that's great. So yeah, it's worth your time to watch this or to try and find this and at least give it a shot.
Yeah, go out and check out some of the clips on YouTube or whatever. I think you'll be in. So yeah. Do you want to do recommended?
I didn't do any.
Oh my God! Is the table's turned?
I could probably figure some out.
I think I've already mentioned all mine anyway.
I was gonna. So here, we'll just do it this way. So I was thinking like an interesting recommended, if you like, for Morvern Callar would be After Sun. So that would be one. Yeah.
I just had the Sweet and Lowdown this mainly because of Samantha Morvern. I mean, like, if you haven't seen that performance of hers, it's just...
You should.
Yeah.
What were some other ones you had?
I think, the only ones that I had, we only do 3. So in The Last Gallant of Cadavra, throw a dart, right? I mean, you can pick any of them.
Yeah, any of those.
I mean, like, I think, and I know Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, did parody this one, but like, not parody, but made fun of. But This Island Earth is, to me, like, the one that, like, I kind of always go back to is, like, the silly science, the silly sets and, like, all of the, we're doing science stuff. And then the whole kind of, Metaluna and the interocitor, all these, like, made up science terms that they do. I think that one kind of plays closest to, like, what The Last Skeleton is doing. And then my last one for the Butcher Boy would be Heavenly Creatures. I think a good double pairing would be Peter Jackson's Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's great. We'll leave it there. They can
right, and then you can go out and find out your own. It's whatever.
Yeah, you know what? Just use Google. No. Anyway, Merry fucking Christmas.
You guys have computers.
Yeah, Merry fucking Christmas.
Merry fucking Christmas.
So next time we'll get back to Hal Hartley.
Yeah.
And I think we can announce that everyone should stay tuned for our first annual award show. We can see who takes home a coveted Screamy Award.
Yay. The first annual Screamies. This ain't your mama's award show.
That's right. Well, depending on who your mother is.
Right. It could be your mom. No offense.
I don't want to talk about moms.
Also, we'll probably be talking Monster.
Yes.
Soon. So.
Yes. We will talk about Monster, and we will talk about the next two. What did we say with Hal Hartley? Simple Men and Surviving Desire.
Yes.
And so those two, along with Monster, there you go.
It's a good episode.
There's a good.
And then we'll figure out where to throw in the Screamies.
They're all good episodes.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I'm just saying, I don't even want to fucking say it. Like, I mean, of course, it's a good episode. I'm just saying it to myself, like, I mean, do I want to get jazzed or pumped up about this? I'm pumped up all the time. But, like,
Look, more Hal Hartley.
Right.
More interesting use of Yola Tango songs. More appearances of Holly Marie Combs. More weird Martin Donovan dance scenes, right? In both of these films. So
right. One of the things that, like,
what's not to look forward to?
Right. One of the things that, like, my wife loves international travel. That's the reason we end up doing it as much as we do. But one of the things I love about international travel is the ability to just fucking kill 4 movies in a row. And I always watch shit. Like, it's not like I watch anything that's like, I on this, like, I watched, nothing good. Like, I mean, really, like, A Haunting in Venice and you know,
no,
just
it's terrible. That's not good at all.
Yeah, no. I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Because it's awful. I mean, look, the source material's trash. The movie is trash.
I watched The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Also terrible.
Yeah, not good either.
No.
Man, what else did I watch? I watched this Japanese film called I Am What I Am, and maybe, but it was a really kind of banal take on asexualism.
Oh.
And it was just weird. It was weird to watch.
Are you saying it's just kind of like in between?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then I tried to watch Strays and I couldn't.
Oh gosh, that's surprising.
That I tried to watch it or I couldn't.
That you couldn't make it through.
Oh no, the flight ended and
okay.
The flight like ended and I didn't.
You're like, oh, it was so good. I should have no.
And I use a lot of times I use those flights to kind of like fill in gaps of things that I haven't seen. I never watch any unless I need to fall asleep or I know that the flight is ending. So I turned on Bodies as the first flight into Vienna was landing. But yeah, no, the idea of like sitting in a chair and like having a good 8 to 10 hours just to like dive into a prescribed set of movies. So it's awesome. It's just so good.
I don't know. You must fly first class because I cannot sit in those fucking chairs.
No. I don't fly first class.
That was a joke.
But
that was a joke. Okay.
I get up in between movies. It also makes a nice break for me where I get up in between them and after each movie is over.
It's so tough. Flying internet. Oh man, flying for 3 hours and I'm like in pain for.
I spent a lot of time, in a previous job flying to the Middle East, and so like I just got used to it, and then I could just kind of steady myself for a good like 16-hour flight, and I would do it like to me like staying on the plane and getting the flight rather than like flying and having a layover and then having to do all this shit because like wherever you land. It always can really suck, but like if you land in Frankfurt, that's the worst fucking airport in the world, and then of course you've got Heathrow, and that one sucks too. So I'd rather just stick on it. Yeah. So anyway, it's good stuff. That's good content right there. You can keep all that in.
I will. Yeah. All right, so that's what you have to look forward to next time. That more tales of traveling. But look, until then, Merry Christmas, and thanks for listening.
And I was going to say we wish you a screaming Christmas, but I'll just say keep screaming.
The promise of excitement is one the night will keep. After all, there's only one more sleep till Christmas. Got a smile today, the world has got a glow. There's no such thing as strangers when a stranger says hello. And everyone is family, we're having so much fun. After all, there's only one more sleep till Christmas.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,